I'm Melinda Han Williams. If you don't know Dstillery, we use AI for behavioral targeting of ads, and we offer ID-free targeting, which does behavioral targeting without tracking the person who's getting targeted. So today I'm going to talk about AI, privacy, and targeting, which are three things that don't necessarily all come up in the same sentence, but I'll show how some of the methods, the AI methods related to ChatGPT can actually be used for targeting in a way that is totally privacy friendly and actually opens up new doors, new opportunities to rethink how targeting works. But before we get into that, we have a quick poll. So this is, we have a quick poll that someone else turns on. And so this is totally anonymous. You can do it from your, pull out your phones, everyone's on it. And it's just a couple of questions. I'll give you guys a minute to find it and answer the first couple of questions. And then don't put your phone away because there's going to be another question after that. Not that anyone would ever put their phones away. Okay, so it looks like most people have answered some of the questions. Sweet. So where in the industry are you from? We have a lot of agency representation, some brand, some tech platform, some other. I wish I knew what other was. Did anyone want to say what other is for you personally? Okay, you can tell me later. And some publisher. Great. I'm going to go to the next question. And this is, which of the following do you associate with AI? I love the optimism in this room that we're leading with powerful. That's awesome. Also data hungry, for sure. A couple dangerous, 0% privacy friendly. Very interesting. Okay. Last question. Oh, I can keep clicking this clicker. This has nothing to do with it. All right. Last question. Have you ever tried or played with ChatGPT? It could be for fun, could be for work, whatever. And we're at 86%. So 86% of you have tried ChatGPT. The other 14%, give it a try. It's really cool. It's the future. Okay, and then the last thing is a word cloud. So I think that populates as another question. So as you've gone through this conference in the last couple days, as you're preparing for 2024, what are the industry trends that are biggest on your minds? So it can be like a word or a phrase. And I think you can even enter a couple of them if there are a couple of big ones on your mind. And as you think of them, I think they'll start. Oh, we got a lot of people typing. Cool. Okay, cool. Person-based AI, generative AI. Oh my gosh, yes. Personalization, a lot of AI-related things. Little bit of targeting, little bit of privacy. I maybe primed you a little bit for this question. Maybe not totally where my head is. Definitely generative AI is like the biggest thing on everyone's mind. There's still a couple people typing. Okay, cool. AI is the clear winner, the huge trend. And then there's a bunch of other kind of little trends that I would say a lot of them kind of relate to AI also. Attribution, privacy, thank you. Okay, so thanks for humoring me and participating in this poll. So back to AI, privacy, and targeting. I'm going to focus mainly on two trends in digital advertising today. These are two that really I think have been building up steam over the last few years. And first, of course, is privacy. I think this is top of mind for a lot of us right now as we prepare for Google to deprecate third-party cookies next year. But it's not just cookies, right? There's legislation, there's consumer sentiment. And I think that you can say that this really started being important in advertising as far back as 6 years ago when Safari started making changes to make cookies less available in its browser. The other big trend, obviously, AI is on everybody's mind. Not hard to understand why. And the big developments in the last year or so in AI really have ridden on this wave of development that's extends back as far as almost 10 years. So taking these two topics together, I know we don't usually think of it more as data hungry, and 0% of people in this room think of AI as privacy friendly, which is understandable. But I'm going to show that with the right use of AI, it actually can be very privacy friendly. And at Dstillery, we set out to use AI for targeting, not just to work around these privacy restrictions, but actually to do the best targeting we could do without any user information at all. And what we ended up with was something that was not only privacy friendly, but also provides this extra level of intelligence that has since allowed us to rethink targeting in a way that really improves what we can do for campaigns and their efficiency. So in this talk, first I'm going to talk about Dstillery AI ID-free targeting and how AI can be used to do behavioral targeting without any information about the user. And then really the bulk of this talk is going to be about how that use of AI lets us rethink targeting. And I'm going to talk about 2 common practices ID-free lets us rethink, and also share some results from a recent campaign. Okay, so Dstillery's ID-free targeting, how AI can power privacy-safe behavioral targeting. So of course, behavioral targeting typically uses a lot of behavioral data, but increasingly there's a lot of situations where this data is not available. So today when this happens, it's about half the time on display impressions in the US, and this is mostly people using a browser that just doesn't have third-party cookies on by default. In the future, when third-party cookies are deprecated, we should expect to see this even more. And I know there's a lot of alternative identifiers and other kind of workaround solutions out there in order to do user-based targeting after cookies are gone, but there's still going to be a ton of situations where you're not going to have any information about the user. And so every marketer really needs to have a tool for this situation for how to target their messaging when this is all you know about your user. So what can you do in that situation? So the one thing that you do have is that inventory moment. So ID-free does the targeting, makes that targeting decision based on just this impression itself, the URL, the time of day, and the website. So this is programmatic targeting, right? Programmatic advertising with real-time bidding. So the campaign is making every single buying decision individually for each impression, literally this one ad slot on one person's screen in this moment. And ID-free is going to do this just using the URL, the time of day, and the DMA. And from this tiny amount of information, ID-free produces this impressively specific and accurate response. So we've been running ID-free since 2020, and we've trademarked it, we've patented it, but until recently, it's been really hard to explain how our AI knows so much that it's able to give such a detailed answer in response to such a tiny prompt. But now there's another AI on the market, and this is one that I know that 86% of you have actually tried, and it shares DNA with ID-free, and so that AI, of course, is ChatGPT. Okay, what is ChatGPT? I can ask ChatGPT, I can ask it to write me a poem about privacy-friendly advertising, and it responds for 9 stanzas in the style of Shakespeare, right? So how does this ChatGPT and ID-free, how does it know so much that it can give such a detailed answer in response to such a tiny prompt? So the answer is ID-free and ChatGPT are on the same family tree. If you think of ChatGPT as like the latest new leaf on this tree, the technology behind ID-free is an earlier branch of the same tree. And so ID-free, it doesn't use ChatGPT, right? It predates ChatGPT, but it's part of that same recent chapter of AI advancements, and it uses a lot of the same concepts and algorithms. So you might have heard that ChatGPT learns by predicting the next word in the sentence for millions of sentences pulled from the internet. ID-free learns by predicting the next website in a journey for millions of opted-in web journeys from our online panel data. So this pre-training step, so that's the P in ChatGPT, this is what allows both ID-free and ChatGPT to build up this depth of knowledge that it's then going to bring to any new problem. So in the case of ID-free, that pre-training step, it comes from millions of web journeys from opted-in panel data, over 1 million users in the US, And this is collected outside the ad ecosystem. It doesn't have anything to do with third-party cookies, and it's ingested and updated every day. And so by looking at how a website appears across these millions of journeys, the ID-free learns what a visit to this website means. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the content on the page. We found that the most powerful signals that we've been able to get for predictive targeting, we get those when we let the AI just learn from like the behavioral patterns and how these websites are used in real life. So it's totally in the same way that ChatGPT learns language just by seeing how it's used in real life. So we encode that understanding of internet behavior in a 128-dimensional map of the internet. So here, every dot is a website. Its position in 128 dimensions encodes the meaning of a visit to that website in relation to every other site on the internet. So it's flattened here to 2D to fit on the screen. And so now we're going to use the map of the internet to build an ID-free model specific to the brand that's going to tell us the level of interest in the brand's message for every single impression moment, for all display impressions across all browsers without an ID. So here the color corresponds to the score for that specific impression. I can highlight some impressions that have especially high scores for this particular brand. And every single impression has its very own score that tells us the level of interest in the brand. So now, without touching any identifiers, without using any information, ID-free can tell us for a specific brand the value of that impression without using any IDs. So in using the same AI concept that powers ChatGPT, ID-free can bring this depth of knowledge to give this really detailed answer in response to this really tiny prompt. And that's what lets us do behavioral targeting with no information about the user at all. So it really is as privacy friendly as it gets. So that was the original motivation for developing ID-free. But now that we have it, the really exciting thing is what this detailed level of information lets us do in terms of rethinking how targeting works. And I really do mean we're going to rethink what it means to target. So to rethink targeting, first we have to step back and think about what is the goal to a brand of targeting in a campaign. So campaigns can have all different goals, right? It can be from brand awareness to product purchases, anything in between. Targeting always has the same goal: to allocate the ad spend, to achieve your campaign goals, whatever they are, as efficiently as possible on a per dollar basis. Okay, I have to talk about goals and KPIs. This is going to come up a lot. So we all need KPIs. You come up with KPIs that are a proxy for your goal, and you track those numbers every single day to see how you're doing. We have to recognize that when the landscape changes and when technology changes, KPIs that were once useful can become outdated and can actually become a constraint on achieving your real brand goals. So I'm going to talk about 2 ways to rethink targeting. So these are 2 common practices, 2 problems really that limit the performance of most campaigns that you can stop doing as soon as you know the value of every single impression without an ID. So the first is targeting doesn't have to be binary, and second, the availability of IDs doesn't have to constrain your targeting. Okay, I'm gonna go through this, and I'm in each of these in more details, and I'm also gonna show the results from a recent campaign and how much improvement we saw by breaking away from these 2 common practices. Okay, so first, targeting doesn't have to be binary. So traditional audience targeting recognizes that some consumers are more interested in your brand, more receptive to your message. So you create a target audience of those people, and you don't waste your ad spend on anyone else. So this is great. But we all know that interest in your brand isn't a yes or no binary, right? Interest in your brand exists on a spectrum. If you want to show it quantitatively, it looks something like this. So when you reach just the most interested people and ignore everyone else, what you're doing is you're allocating the same amount of effort, the same amount of ad spend really, to everyone who makes the cut, and then 0 to everyone else. So you're overspending on these people. You're actually underspending on the most interested people, And you're missing all of these opportunities over here. Okay, so targeting is all about allocating ad spend, right? That's the goal of targeting. So this is better than nothing. Targeting like this made total sense when we just had blunt tools like demographics to decide who to reach. But come on, it is 2023. We all have technology in our pockets that can write a sonnet about privacy-friendly advertising in a matter of seconds, right? So we can do better than this. And in particular, with something like Dstillery ID-free, where you know the value of every single impression, the level of interest of every single impression, it's very straightforward to allocate your ad spend in a way that actually makes more sense and is more efficient. So target every impression, but pay exactly what it's worth. So you're not wasting any money, and you're not missing any opportunities. Now, this is a totally different way to think about targeting. The targeting itself is expressed through the bid price rather than including or excluding potential customers. So back to KPIs. If you're using conversion rate as a KPI, your raw conversion rate on a per impression basis is going to look terrible with this method. You're going to reach a lot of people who are super unlikely to convert. But you only reach them when you can buy that impression for exactly what it's worth. So the price per conversion is going to be super efficient. Right? The goal of targeting is to reach your campaign goal as efficiently as possible. So that's what we're doing here. And you've got to pay attention to those KPIs. If you want to understand efficiency, your KPI has to include cost, right? So, okay, let's see how this worked in real life. So we worked with Tombras, a super forward-thinking independent agency who came to us with the goal of becoming the first cookie-free agency. So they wanted to find solutions that would perform similarly to what their clients are used to seeing with third-party cookies. And they were really ready to challenge the standard assumptions about targeting and really focus on the real brand goals. Okay, so we ran this for a retail brand, and we ran Dstillery ID-free with predictive bidding to buy each impression for exactly what it's worth. And we ran that against Dstillery's ID-based custom AI. So this is our high-performing cookie-based custom audience solution. And then we measured cost per action, so CPA. So a lower CPA means that you're paying less for each conversion, so it's more efficient targeting, right? And ID-free, even though ID-free doesn't need an ID to do the targeting, we ran all of this on traffic that had IDs just so that we could use the cookies to do this measurement. Okay, so how did it look? So we're looking at CPA, so lower is better. On the left, you see in gray, you see ID-based, and on the right in blue is ID-free. So ID-free outperformed ID-based with a 20% lower CPA. So how did ID-free, without any information about the user, do better than this high-performing custom audience-based solution that has full cookie histories? And it did better because ID-free bids on every impression at the right price. So here we're looking at real data from the campaign of what ID-free bid based on the impression value. Actually, every single impression got its very own bid price for its very own value, but for simplicity, I broke it up into buckets here, and then I broke the top bucket up even further so you can really see the full range of bid prices. So you can see higher value impressions that corresponds to more interested consumers, and then those impressions are getting a higher bid price, right? So to understand why this works so well, we can ask the question, what happens if you compare the impressions that reach those less interested consumers to the impressions that reach the more interested consumers? So the less interested ones, those are the ones that we would have completely ignored with a normal targeting strategy, right? How did they actually perform in this campaign? So in the campaign, the impressions reaching the most interested consumers delivered a CPA of $4.11. And the impressions reaching less interested consumers delivered a similar, but actually even better CPA of $3.82. So when bought at the right price, these impressions that previously would have been completely ignored actually delivered equally strong performance. All of the magic here is in knowing exactly what to pay for each impression. With that superpower, we're able to uncover this whole pool of opportunity that would have been previously ignored, but at the right price, it can perform just as well as the other opportunity and really increase your ad spend your reach overall. So with access to this new pool of opportunity, you can either extend your reach or improve your efficiency or do both. Okay, so was the first big opportunity to rethink targeting. Instead of targeting with a yes/no binary, use price to target based on interest in your brand. So next up on common practices that we can now leave behind is don't constrain your targeting to the availability of IDs. Okay, so right now about half of the display impressions in the US have an identifier. So these are people mostly using a browser that has third-party cookies on by default. The impressions without an identifier are 50 to 90% cheaper today. These impressions, these are just different people on the exact same websites, right? So like these people, they're mostly Safari users. They're just as valuable to the brand to reach. They just don't have third-party cookies enabled. So why not reach the other half of the pie? Well, there's two big reasons that hold most advertisers back. One, without an ID, you don't have all that behavioral info. It's just hard to target in that space, right? So Dstillery ID free solves that. But two, without an ID, you don't have that one-to-one measurement where you can see exactly who you reached and then track them and see whether that impression led to a conversion. And a lot of advertisers rely on KPIs that only count conversions when they can be tied back to a specific impression. Okay, but without that cookie-based KPI, how can you reach these people and then still know whether you're actually achieving your brand goals, right? That's important too. Well, you can model that. So you can take what you can see in the space with IDs and use that to measure performance in the space without IDs. And I know we all love the specificity that comes from seeing exactly who converted. But it comes at a really high price. It literally costs 2 to 10 times more for an impression of the same value to the brand, and you have to give up half of your reach. Okay, so let's go back to that Tombras case study and look at what happened when Tombras ditched this constraint and how much more efficiently they were able to target and actually reach their real campaign goals. Okay, so this is the bid prices I showed before, right? And so in blue, we bucketed it up based on the value campaign. How much did we pay for these different impressions? And in blue, I'm showing the tactic that we ran where we only ran on impressions that had IDs so we could do this one-to-one measurement. In red, I'm going to show what the bid prices look like when we ran it on any inventory, whether or not there was an ID. Since we're using ID free, we can still predict the value of every single impression. But since impressions without IDs can be won for just so much cheaper, it's just way cheaper across the board for the exact same inventory. And really the same inventory. Like if you look at one individual bucket, you can see that you're just paying way less for inventory with the same value to the brand. So you're automatically just gonna have way more efficient spend and better performance out of each ad dollar. Okay, so what did the actual performance look like? So this is what I showed you before, right? So we're looking at CPA, so lower is better. We have ID based in gray, ID free in blue. And this ID free in blue is the one that we ran on trackable inventory only, inventory that had IDs, so we could do that one-to-one measurement. In red, I'm gonna show what the performance looked like when we ran ID free on any impressions, regardless of whether there was an ID. And here we see another huge improvement in CPA. So if you just compare those two ID-free tactics, you can see just the improvement you get from targeting beyond IDs. And just that change alone doubles the conversions per dollar that you get. Overall, when you look at running ID-free compared to ID-based, there's a total of over a CPA improvement of over 60%, which corresponds to over 2.5 more conversions per dollar. So if you look at this, you can see that, that these big improvements really come from these two big ideas. The first one, to express your targeting beyond a one-to-one binary, use price to express your targeting and pay exactly what that impression is worth. And second, to target beyond IDs and not let those outdated KPIs constrain your scale and inflate your price. So to wrap it up, privacy-friendly AI lets us redefine ad targeting. Thoughtful use of AI can enable truly privacy-friendly behavioral targeting, and we do this by predicting the value of every single impression without an ID or without any information about the user, just based on the information about the inventory itself. So this is as privacy-friendly as it gets. And that's great, but the really exciting thing is what this use of AI, the opportunity that it opens up to really let us rethink targeting in these two key ways. First, to target based on interest in the brand. So using ID-free with predictive bidding, you can buy each impression for exactly what it's worth. So targeting doesn't have to be binary. You can target based on the level of interest in the brand, express it through bid price, and this leads to a much more efficient ad spend per dollar. Lets you spend every dollar smarter. And second, targeting beyond IDs. So ID-free targeting with modeled measurement lets you reach the entire pie. And it lifts the constraints on reach and efficiency that you get when you're chasing outdated KPIs in a world where the availability of IDs is limited. And speaking of KPIs, finally, stay focused on those real brand goals and notice when your KPIs are no longer serving those goals. So thanks for listening. If you want to talk more, if you want to try this, please reach out. And I do have some time for a few questions. Someone has a mic.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That was great. You talked about the training model being based on kind of linear internet behavior going from site to site to site.
Yeah.
Have you tried it on other like digital channels, in feed, in app, things like that, and how does it perform in those scenarios?
That's a cool question. One thing, so this was display only. If you'd asked me this any day up until today, I would have said this solution is available for display only. But we actually are just now introducing this for CTV as well, so we're adding that into the model as well. All those other formats you mentioned still to come, but right now we have display and CTV.
Just curious how far back you have to go with that predictive web journey to sort of model.
Yeah. So you can include as much as you want, but what we found is you actually get most of the predictive power just looking at even individual pairs, what website comes right after the next website, which is really cool because it means that the data that feeds that model is super privacy friendly. It's just like you don't need to know anything about that person. You just need to know when someone goes to this website, what are they about to do next?
Hopefully this isn't a stupid question, but since you're looking at the incrementality of how far your dollar can go from one to the other, at some point, when Google fully does deprecate the cookies and there's only one choice, and then everybody is using some variation of your type of solution or a competing solution, so how would the brands be able to benefit beyond that if everybody's using it?
So first of all, I love your premise that post-cookie, everybody will be using our solution. I think that, so I showed that pie chart, right, where like half of the impressions have IDs. And I think that post-cookie, there will be other IDs, right? There's UID2s or ramp IDs and like literally 100 others. And so that will be some of the pie, but I think it will be a much smaller part of the pie if you look at not just how many people are opting into those solutions, but how many publishers are implementing them, and then how often the people are authenticating on those solutions. Like right now, there's very little inventory in that space, and I think it's still going to be much smaller than 50% post-cookie, right? So if that ID part of the pie is smaller, then that discrepancy, like that inventory is going to get even more expensive. It's going to be more scarce and get more expensive, and the discrepancy and the gains to be had by using the stuff without identifiers, I think they're just going to be even larger.
could you see a world where even in inventory that's got an ID available, people opt for a solution like this for the privacy reasons, and like you end up with a kind of two lane, two cost kind of scenario where you basically get rewarded for choosing to be more privacy friendly?
You as the advertiser, or as the as the person buying the inventory, I guess as the advertiser you get rewarded cheaper inventory for being more privacy friendly. I mean, that world is available today, right? If you want to choose to be, like we saw in this Tombers case study, the version that used no IDs at all was like 2.5 times better performance than the version that used IDs. So yes, I guess is the answer to the question. You can do better today even without IDs. All right. So thanks